In this presentation, I'm going to go over the last rough draft for your professional portfolio. And so up until now, you have written the introduction section, your executive summary section, and the artifacts section. So again, your professor will provide you feedback on your material, and you are expected to update your professional portfolio, the sections that you've turned in so far, with your third rough draft. So in your third rough draft, you're going to do the reflection section of your professional portfolio. So I'm going to pull open the athletic training reflection section. So you have three main areas within the reflection section. First one is your growth. How can you continue to grow, and what areas do you do best, and how can you grow in those areas? That's the general ideal of your reflection section. So, with your growth, this student actually used a little bit different section heading than what's in the template. So should have noticed that before I started recording. Okay, so professional growth. Okay, so since you started teaching, since you started coaching, since you started being a strength and conditioning coach, how have you grown, gotten better, improved in that specific standard or core responsibility? So for a PE teacher, how have you developed better lesson plans addressing shape standard 1 since you were a student, since you first began teaching, when maybe you're doing your student teaching? So I want you to be specific here. How have you improved since you first began teaching standard 1? Only address standard 1. For coaches, how's your understanding of developing a coaching philosophy grown over the years? Younger coaches really struggle with this. They don't understand the importance of having a coaching philosophy. The more experienced coach does. That's one thing I've noticed about this area, is that younger coaches just don't quite understand the necessity of having a coaching philosophy. Now, again, read the core responsibility and the standards within that core responsibility. How have you grown specifically in those areas since you started coaching? This could have been when you were a high school student and you're coaching youth. I probably didn't have any understanding of this area. That's fine. That's what you want to address here. Again, we're only addressing the standards that are being addressed in this particular portfolio. As a strength and conditioning coach, how have you improved on getting your clients ready to exercise? That's basically what a pre-participation physical and clearance is all about. How do we know if a client is ready to even engage in physical activity, to start doing strength training? How do we eliminate any back issues, blah, blah, blah? How have you grown in that area since you first started being a strength and conditioning coach? So that's what you're addressing in the professional growth section. This is about 2 to 3 paragraphs in that section. Next one is, how do you continue? This is plan for growth. How do you continue? How do you want to grow? How can you grow in this particular standard? How can you get better at teaching standard 1? How can you get better at implementing your coaching philosophy or setting your vision with your team? Be specific here on how you can grow in that area. How can you become better at identifying potential health risks for your clients as a strength and conditioning coach? Do you need to go to a conference? Do you need to read particular articles? Whatever you need to do to grow in that particular area for that particular standard. Again, 2 to 3 paragraphs here. This is all self-reflection. The third section is about strengths. Now, you've been provided some information about strengths in the class. Basically, a strength is something that it's a task. It's something that you do repeatedly well most of the time in your job. It is made up of talents. That's kind of how God has made you. Is made up of skills. It's made up of the knowledge that you have. And again, a strength should actually something that you enjoy doing. It shouldn't be something that you hate doing. So in this area, in the strengths area, what about standard 1, or what about responsibility, core responsibility 1? What about the pre-participation physical exam standard is an area of strength? So first you want to identify that. What is something that you are actually really good at in this particular standard or core responsibility? Explain why that is an area of strength for you, and then how you can actually develop that area to be even better at that area. What I'm really trying to get students to focus on in this section is not fixing or managing weaknesses. I want you to make a switch and focus on the things that you already do really well and even get better at those things. I'll use the basketball analogy. If you're a really good three-point shooter, you should focus all your time, not all your time, but majority of your time in practice on continuing to improve in your shooting. Okay. Now I put in here, if you have actually completed the Clifton Strengths Finder evaluation, I don't want you to address your strength themes, because that's just one component of a strength. That's just the talent within it. I want you to address your area of strength. The area of strength, again, is the thing that you're doing, and it's made up of that talent. It's made up of skills, experience, and knowledge, as I said before. Again, address the things that you do well and how you can continue to improve in that area. This is 2 to 3 paragraphs. Now, for the rough draft, you're not going to turn in your courage and calling reflection, but for your final portfolio, you will. You'll see in the appendix that addresses the courage and calling for each one of the portfolios what chapter should be turned in for your courage and calling reflection. But for your rough draft, you're not going to turn that in. Okay, so this is your last rough draft for your professional portfolios. Again, you should be making corrections each week. You should make corrections for your final portfolio that's due in week 4. So by the time you finish your first portfolio, you should have a really good example of way to write this professional portfolio. So your second, third, and so forth and so on portfolios, you'll follow the same process that you're doing. The faculty will not give you feedback each week, but I assume that if you contact your faculty and say, hey, can you review my second portfolio? Make sure it's completely done, your second portfolio. I'm sure they'll be happy to read it. As long as you give them time, don't email them on a Friday before it's due, because we are all pretty busy, but give us time to read and give you feedback. If you have any questions, again, please contact your faculty member, because they are here to help.